I'm going to be straightforward with you guys. I don't want to talk about this episode for very long. I know it's a very divisive episode, and I know that regardless of what opinion I offer on the topic of this episode, there is going to be a large number of people who vehemently disagree. And I feel like the less that I talk about it, the better. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind alienating people whose views are just so different from mine that they can't coexist with my own. But that's not what I set out to do with these reviews and these theories. I don't set out to alienate people. So very, very briefly, let's go over what this episode is about. Spoilers, of course. I also feel like I should probably leave a trigger warning on this video since I am going to be talking in length about abuse. Seeing how depressed Lapis always is, Steven decides he wants to try to take her out onto the ocean in a boat that Greg rented with his huge amounts of money in an attempt to not only make her feel better but to help her get over the reservations she's had about the ocean since unfusing from Jasper. And I just want to point out there is a very, very funny gag here where we see that the original name for the boat is the SS Misery, but they have renamed it after Lapis. I just thought that was absolutely hysterical. And at the end of the day, this episode isn't devoid of humor. There's a lot of cute, humorous scenes of Steven and Lapis on the boat together, with Greg, of course, in some of them, because he is there as well. And it's good to see Lapis genuinely happy, because we haven't really seen her genuinely happy much in the show so far. I also want to point out we do get a really good scene with Lapis being formally introduced to Greg, where she apologizes for hurting him back in Ocean Gem. But we do see later in the episode that he still fears her power, and that Lapis herself kind of fears her own power, which is very interesting, and it contributes to the climax of this episode, to the tone that I feel the crew was trying to go for here. Anyway, Lapis tries pole fishing, and she ends up hooking something quite large, but it breaks the rod and she has to let it go. Several minutes later, something seems to be latching onto the bottom of the boat and then climbs up the side. Turns out it was Jasper. Jasper has been looking for Lapis so that she can beg Lapis to fuse with her again into malachite. Lapis quite bravely says no, and when Steven stands up for his friend, Jasper tries to attack him, so Lapis has no choice but to punch Jasper out of the frickin' frame. That causes damage to the boat, which causes it to sink, which means now Greg has to pay for it, which is really sad, but thankfully Lapis is able to fly both Steven and Greg back to shore safely, and that's the episode. And just from that brief summation, it sounds like that this is a Lapis empowerment episode, that this is Lapis given a chance to bravely stand up to her abuser and say no. But that's not the case at all. Lapis's behavior early in the episode, where she is shown to be afraid of her own abilities, how ashamed she feels when she finds out that she hurt someone like Greg, who isn't a bad person and is now her friend. Evidence from previous episodes and all of the dialogue between Lapis and Jasper in this episode proves, without a shadow of a doubt, that Lapis was the abuser. And this is something that the Steven Universe fandom is pretending like they didn't already know. We already knew this. We saw it back in Chili Tea. We saw that Lapis was the one who was keeping Jasper prisoner and making her life horrible. And now Jasper has become so enamored with how powerful Lapis is that she wants to re-engage in this abusive relationship. She's become addicted to this abusive relationship, just like a lot of people do in real life. Yes, Jasper is not a good person. She could be eventually, but she's not a good person, at least not yet. But she was abused by Lapis. And what she is going through is heartbreaking. It's like a form of Stockholm Syndrome. She should know that Lapis isn't good for her, but there's nothing that she can do about it because she feels compelled to re-engage with Lapis, to reform that relationship regardless of how damaging it was. And I know there are a lot of people out there who read this completely differently, that think Lapis was the one who was abused, and that when Lapis told Jasper no, she was being brave in that she was refusing to re-engage with her abuser, but that's not the case. Yes, Lapis made a brave decision here. She had even admitted earlier in the episode that she did miss Jasper, that she did miss being malachite. But what people aren't realizing is that Lapis made the decision not to be an abuser anymore. This is such a bold direction to take this character, and I didn't actually think that the crew would be this blatant with this analogy, but they're going for it hardcore. Yes, Lapis was mistreated by both Jasper and Peridot during her time as their prisoner. I am of course not disputing that. But in the case of Malachite, in the case of the relationship represented by the fusion character Malachite, Lapis was the abusive party. The writing makes that clear. That is definitely the direction that the crew has always intended to take this. And I have a lot of respect for that. The issue that I'm having here isn't with the theme that they chose for these characters. It's with the huge missed opportunity here at the end when Lapis punches Jasper away. After she had acknowledged to herself, she had just acknowledged to herself that she had been abusive to Jasper and that she didn't want to start that up again, she attacks Jasper, and yes, she was protecting Steven. But she could have protected Steven without launching Jasper out of the frickin' episode. It's obvious now that the crew has plans for Jasper in the future, but what I would have liked to have seen here was Lapis engage with Jasper in a positive manner and talk her down and make her realize that they could form a relationship that was meaningful, that didn't involve either of them abusing the other. Even if Jasper didn't agree to it here, it still would have planted the idea in her mind, and maybe she would have left of her own accord then, rather than having to be attacked by the person who had abused her. It just sends such a bad message. Again, yes, I acknowledge that Lapis was protecting Steven, that Jasper was going to attack and possibly kill Steven, but that was still a scene of an abuser attacking the subject of her abuse. And I could go on and on about this, I could go back and forth about this, I could play the devil's advocate, I could try to be an apologist for Lapis, but I'm not going to do any of that because I don't believe any of that. I believe that Lapis did something wrong, that she can grow past that and become a better person using those past experiences to inform those changes to her character. But that doesn't just excuse what she did. Her potential to be a better person doesn't undo what she did to Jasper. The fact that Jasper isn't a good person does not undo what Lapis did to her. And sadly, it looks like we're going to have to wait quite a while to see this theme developed any further because Jasper is once again removed from the equation. On the bright side, it doesn't look like Jasper's about to die or anything since her gem is not cracked like I theorized. So unless Lapis punching her in the face with a giant water fist broke it, Jasper is fine and will return to the show because we do know now that she is looking for Lapis. And now possibly Steven as well. I guess the point to take away from this review is that this was a heavy episode. It's going to be a divisive episode. It already is a divisive episode. And I feel like it's left so up in the air at this point that nothing is resolved. And I just kind of wish that that weren't the case. All that said, guys, what did you think of this episode if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And please try not to hate on each other down there. Just because this is a divisive episode, it doesn't mean we can't talk civilly about the differences in our opinions. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.